No matter what people want you to believe, don't ever turn back on your dreams. Told them your
Hi, Ari. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to 3 Degrees of Love Divination. Thank you for joining me today. It's really exciting to meet you. I've had the chance to talk with you just before we started this. And this is really exciting for me because, like I'd mentioned before on my channel, it's not just really about reviews and, look at this deck or look at the latest deck that I got, kind of thing. I want to get to know the creator behind the work. And to me, it gives that extra sort of personal touch, to really get to know the artist and the amazing brain behind the creating. Because I find the decks that I gravitate towards, um I most of the time are decks that I feel are really in alignment with self-development and promoting mental wellness, because of course I'm all about mental health. My background is social work and being an advocate for mental health. We're in a global mental health crisis, so I always talk about that. And it's funny because there was maybe a few weeks back I was doing a reading, and I would like with some of my cards, not your cards, but some other cards at the time. Um and so, and just earlier, just before we hit record, I was telling you how the way my brain works is like I'll hear like I'll hear a message, and then all of a sudden my brain will put it into like a song that exists or something like that, and I can hear the song playing. And so there was a card, I forget what the card that I had pulled, but it basically looked like it was something about the phoenix, and there were flames and things like that. And the song that came to me was Alicia Keys' This Girl Is on Fire, except the lyrics was that I heard playing in my head was, "This world is on fire." And I'm like, no kidding. Like, we've got like war, we've got like, and everybody is in a state of like what I would consider like a zombie apocalypse, just without the actual zombies. It's more of a zombie apocalypse with the mind, right? Because we have so many people in this world who are walking around full of trauma and a lot of unhealed trauma. And the trauma, the way it influences our decisions, or our ways of life. We walk around with this cloak of darkness that I feel then just creates more darkness. And that is why the world is in such an uproar, why the world is so on fire, as the song had played in my head. And so, and everybody's on edge, everybody's sensitive, and then it's the way that people, what's the word I'm looking for, sort of display those feelings, right? And the way it goes about it, it's like we forget that on the other side, or who we're interacting with, is also another human being. And just like the way we are. So the way how we want to see ourselves and be accepted for who we are, we have to be willing to do that for other people too. Otherwise it doesn't work, because then the karmic cycle just comes back, and then we're just recycling all this negative energy, right? So that's why, as I experienced the tower of my life, and me sort of trying to heal and going through all this work, therapy, and then as I taken a nosedive into tarot, I see how beneficial combining the two has been for me. And so because of that, I absolutely love to talk about this with other people who, who think the same way. And so earlier I was telling you about how I came across your deck. Um, and you've right now both your decks that you've come out with are both now mass market. One with Hay House, and then the other with US Games more recently, which is the Trinity Tarot. So, um, I want to hear from you. Well, first, let's start with who you are, Ari. Let's start with that question.
Hey, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really glad, and and to add to what you've said, like about how tarot can be useful within the realm of mental health. Like I'm in total agreement. That's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about the tarot myself, is because of its um ability to empower the person using it, and its ability to kind of ground you and so on. But I'm sure we'll get into that even further. So yeah, so primarily I'm a visual artist. So I'm an illustrator and artist, both digital and traditional with paint. And I got into tarot in 2017. And over the 2020 lockdown, I started making my own tarot decks. And I've made two tarot decks. Both I started self-publishing, and then both I've been very fortunate to be able to pass on to publishers. And I'm currently working on an Oracle deck. Well, in fact, I'm working on
Oh,
two Oracle
wow. Okay.
decks. Strangely, I'm working on two Oracle decks. One I know, all being well, will be out next year, and the other one I haven't even whispered to a publisher because I want to make it fully um, independently. So I'm keeping that one close to my chest. Um, so yeah, it's as an artist, both my artist mind and my visual artist mind, I like to live through experience, and I like to take what I experience and take what I learn and weave it into something good or useful. And the tarot is a tool. It's a tangible tool that you can hold in your hand. And I get really excited about making artwork that you can actually hold and use for your spiritual practice, for your mental health, for your well-being. So yeah, that's what started happening over the last few years. My day job, I'm a graphic designer, which is a bit more commercial to pay my bills. But yeah, this is my passion, and this is what I have been really focusing and increasingly focusing my time and energy on these days.
Nice. So, you said that you got into tarot in 2017. So, I'm curious to know how you even got into tarot in the first place.
Sure. So I got into tarot. So I was really very religious until I was about 27. In 2017, I was 27. And I'd spent 2 years like grappling with that faith, going to different churches. I'd kind of been disfellowshipped from my original church, and then I rejoined. It was all quite messy. And then I kind of broke out of that type of religion, organized religion. I came out as queer, and then I moved to London and started a new life. And the reason I came to tarot was I was in need of a new spiritual practice. I was very accustomed to prayer and worship in a certain denomination. So I was drawn to the tarot because it's so visual. I was also drawn partially because my first tarot deck was the Rider-Waite-Smith, which has a lot of Christian themes in it. So there was something kind of familiar to me, and also a bit of a reclaim because it wasn't Christianity, but it was using symbols and themes that I already recognized.
Yes.
Uh, but the main thing, and this is what I didn't realize until after I started playing with the tarot, was just how it was teaching me how to listen to my intuition, and it was teaching me how to listen to my heart and listen to my mind and my spirit and eventually my body. It took me a bit longer to get there, but it taught me how to start listening to the four elements of myself and start weighing them up against each other to make a better balance in life. Being a Libra, balance is what I'm going for. But it's taking a little while.
So is
But yeah,
Libra your sun sign?
yeah. So Libra's my sun sign and Aries moon.
Oh, okay.
A little bit of contrast.
Well,
Because
we can
they
talk
never
about
could.
that after. I want to finish hearing this. So yeah, because the way my brain works is the minute I start getting onto a different topic, I will go down that rabbit hole and then forget all about what we were initially talking about.
Um, yeah, so yeah, it was funny because it was surprising. So when I first came to it, it was from kind of a basic need of I need comfort. I felt at the time I couldn't pray. I felt like I couldn't, read the Bible for guidance. I suddenly the whole structure I had was gone. And because I'd spent 27 years of my life relying on those things, I didn't know how to listen to my own heart, mind, body, and spirit. Um, so I kind of turned to the tarot in desperation, but then the more I got to learn it, the more I was like, oh, I'm not, this is not a powerful thing that is giving me power. This is a tool that bringing, is
The
giving me,
power out.
yeah,
Yes, bringing the
yeah,
power from within out. Yeah.
exactly. And it was like, oh, wow, like the answers are actually in me already. The tarot is just helping me channel and connect with that. And that was, I was looking for some answers from some external source, and instead it was like the tarot was like, it's inside you, which was wonderful, and that became the core theme of my first tarot deck was that empowerment and that that the slice of the divinity that is within each one of us. Hence why I called it Trinity Tarot. Again, a little bit of a reclaim of that kind of Christian loaded word. So yeah.
And
Um,
I really like that because I feel like that's how, to me, that's how I think we relate, because that's actually why the channel is called 3 Degrees of Love. It's that idea of the Holy Trinity. Well, also 3 is my life path number. So I was like, and I'm also OCD. So and that's why if you notice, every time I do my emojis, that always has to be in a set of 3. um and that's always that has become my thing. I'm yeah, the emoji girl, because it's always full emojis.
I've enjoyed all your four emojis.
Say that again.
Messages in our messages. I've really enjoyed all the emojis. Never
Well,
open, especially normal.
I'm glad that you do. So, and that makes all my piggies very excited. All my feelings are just like, yay. So yeah, that those, yeah, my piggies are my feelings. And that sort of came around by way too of therapy, being to, separate myself from my feelings and see my feelings as parts of me, but that I'm not always consumed by. So it gives me, it allows for the idea to be able to really reflect, to know, okay, is this really, is what I'm experiencing right now and how I'm feeling, is that actually how I need to be feeling, or is that a trauma response, right? So,
Mm.
and that's sort of where, that whole, the whole idea now, because it's like, now I'm giving them an external
Yeah.
validation. And so ever since then, it's like, yeah, me and my piggies, here we go. And so, and they get a kick out of it. I feel like a nerd, but then I'm like, you know what? I embrace my nerdiness, so it's okay. Because God made me that way. So that's what I tell myself like every day. And then I have a giggle. But anyway, so yeah, like, the whole idea of the Trinity, and then even acknowledging that, then I started seeing that everywhere.
Mm.
So it was like, even now when I look at, and I research the things about like the pentagram and the pentacles, and and the the star, and the star having the 5 points. Well, Like it was when I sat and I did the reflection on things, I was like, so everything is connected. So why are we so divided? Like you know,
Mm,
like that's where, and then so then I started picking apart the words, right? Divination. And
mm,
then I started hearing the more I repeated divination, the more I heard to divide a nation, to
mm.
divide a nation.
Wow, wow.
Hindu, Muslim, all of these dogmatic religions. And I'm like, you know, like that was where I was like, but so we are actually connected, like on a global scale, like, but we somehow, because of our traumas along the
Mhm.
way for generations, we've
Yeah.
lost
Yeah.
our
Oh,
connection.
it's so true. And that's what's so interesting about like the idea of the Trinity of like the divine being divided. And and you see this a lot in the tarot. What I find with the tarot, it's often depicted in like two. So there's two pillars or there's two sides. Um, and what I find really interesting about this idea is that the divine, however you want to like
Define.
describe it, yeah, define it. Um, the divine has to divide in order to look at itself. Um, so and also to produce and to manifest its purpose. So, for example, to use Christian language of the Trinity, you had God the Father, but
Yes.
God the Father had to separate into three in order to manifest his will. Otherwise, he would just be this energy doing nothing. And so he had to divide into this Christ character. He then had to divide into this spirit character that could be dropped into every human and every creation. And and you could see this in everything. For example, you know, the masculine and the feminine, the light, the dark, the good, the bad, etc., etc. And I think the problem is that divide is necessary to show and to create, because when you make masculine and feminine, you create a huge big spectrum. Or if you take, you know, red and blue, you get a whole spectrum of colors. So, but I think the problem that as humans we try to um it's almost like we try to perfect things. So we try to go, there's only black and white, there's only male and female, there's only red and blue. And as a result, the intention is to purify, but what we actually do in that process of trying to purify is we destroy everything between those two polarities. And I think that's why it's so important to like the divine does have to be divided, but it's not divided because it has to be two separate things. It divides it almost like opening a book or like opening like a rainbow. And I don't know if that's like a bit wishy-washy. I don't know how I'm saying it, but uh,
No,
it's an interesting theme of this division, and
yes.
it's all about trying to bring that back together, and as humans, we're always trying to bring things back together, but as a result, sometimes we end up just running further and further left or further and further right or further, you know, we forget that actually the whole beauty of this is that it's diverse. The very beauty of this universe is the fact that that we're all unique, that each individual person is unique. Like, yeah, I don't know. I think we can get so fixated on some kind of there's one way of purifying. You know, we can make this clean cut. No, 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 no. That's not
You
how
know,
it works.
you like the way that you've explained that is like my brain and all my figures are like, yes, he's speaking our language. He knows the pig he knows pig Latin.
Big Latin.
But you know, like and yes, like I'm right there with you, and I'm like, yeah, like this is exactly
Mhm.
the way that to see it, like, and how. But you see, what happens is it's the ego, right? The ego is the root of all evil. If you like, right? Like it's because it's like it's that thirst for power, for righteousness, if you
Mm,
will, right? And the the more trauma that we've built over, a span of however long, the darker that entity, that evil, that blanket is. And because we've gone for thousands of years with so much built up trauma,
mm,
that blanket of darkness is huge,
mm,
right?
mm.
And it's like, well, how do we defeat that? Well, we can't. And in the process of trying to defeat it, I I I feel like we've reached the point now where all that is doing is invoking more trauma, more darkness, because we're trying to counteract it um in a manner that is pretty much a reflection of what we've already endured, right?
I see. It's like if you're pushed over here, your reaction when you want to liberate yourself or you want to like, heal it is to then run over here. Which I think is
Or push
totally,
back, right? Or use the
yeah,
same sort of force that was
yeah,
initially. And so
which is
initially when I
totally
started my channel,
understandable. But
say that again.
which is totally understandable, but really eventually the aim is to get back to the middle. And and it's like hopefully I'm not going too off topic, but it reminds me when I've had a few conversations with people and we've been talking about, you have these protesters, like climate protesters, and there's the whole, oh, they've gone too far. And I haven't got a right or wrong answer for this, but how I see it is they may have gone too far, but they kind of have to then come back into the middle. Um, just like, just like a child, if you restrict a child too much, when they become a teenager, they go wild and they go too far. But then in
Mm-hmm.
adult, they can hopefully come back into a more balanced, safe place in the middle. And so yeah, I think what we're seeing a lot of at the moment is we're seeing a big divide, people becoming very left wing, very, very right wing, and people going to extremes, which is honestly scary. It brings us a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear. And sometimes it's too much to look at the news. But it kind of has to happen. I don't know how that plays out, but it kind of has to happen. And I kind of trust in the universe that the balance is going to sort of regain, and however that looks, there is going to be a lot of destruction in the process, but all creation comes from destruction to a certain level. So it's kind of, I think this is something that I also find the tarot really helps with, is it doesn't cover up the darkness. It doesn't cover up the struggle. There's no to hide. The tarot card has the death card, it has the tower card, it has these scary cards. And it's not there to just fill us with fear. It's there because we have to hold both. We have to hold that in our life we will experience gorgeous, delicious kindness and love and generosity and grace. And we'll also experience horrific pain and loss. And I love that the tarot is very honest about that. And it's also because the nature of tarot is quite playful, it's cards. It allows you to almost like role play or like play with these ideas. And it's also kind of a reminder that once you're dealt a card, like a card game, you can't help what I've just picked a card and it's the devil.
Oh,
Like it's
yeah.
literally the back door. It's perfect for my illustration though, that like you can't control what cards you're given, but you can control how you play it. And then when you
Exactly.
play it, the universe will give you another card. Oh, the Crown of Pentacles. That's more like it. You
Right.
know.
And exactly. And so yeah, it's a game of give and take flow, right? But that's the infinity, right? It's the cycle of life, and it continues, right? So the one analogy that I have resonated with, that is the idea of what do you would call it? What's I forget, all of a sudden I just forgot, merry-go-round. That's what
Oh yeah.
a merry-go-round. So, right, and the idea, well, anything that's circular, right? When you're on either polarity, right? And you're spinning and it's going fast, you're gonna feel, because
Mm.
you're going from one polarity to the other and you're whipping around, right? So and that's dangerous because you could fall off, you could break a leg, you could whatever, you can die essentially, right? So like, I mean, the safest, and the imagine the dizzying effect, right, of that. But but when you find yourself in the middle of that chaos, the
Mm.
center point,
Mm.
that's the stillest part, that you, while it's going like this,
Mm.
right? And everybody who's on the outside is like flailing around. When
Mm.
you're in the center, that is the most safest place that you can possibly be, because you're at the center of it all,
Yeah.
right? Um, and technically, to me, that's how also I've seen where I see humanity. So,
Mm.
we're the guardians of this planet, right?
Yeah.
And the world is so much bigger than Mother Earth, right? Like
Mm.
right? We're only just a fraction
Mm.
of, right?
Mhm.
Because don't forget the other planets, like, right? I mean, somehow we've dismissed Pluto. I don't know why they call it a dwarf planet, but it's still a planet. Okay, like, so but it's so in the center of Earth, right? We are the guardians. We're the intelligence, or supposed to be the intelligence of it all, if you will, right? We're at the top of the pyramid. We're the top of the food chain, whatever. So it is our job to make sure that our world is good, right? Like, our planet is okay. But the world is on fire because we are all chaotic, right? So
Yeah.
like, and this need to for tit for tat, for and this um sort of friction amongst ourselves, the war that we are playing, because we can't see each other as one. We can't
Yeah.
see each other as, well, you're a reflection of me, right? And I'm a reflection of you, and vice versa. It doesn't matter our skin color. It doesn't matter our hair color. It doesn't matter our gender, our sexual orientation. It doesn't matter.
Mhm.
It's about here, right?
Yeah.
Here, and
Mm.
seeing the bigger picture. and
Mhm.
and that's where I feel like the idea of astral travel is great, because how when I've discovered sort of my astral traveling abilities is that I could be sitting on my couch, um and once I've done my rituals with praying and centering myself, and whatever, listening to binaural beats, I can, even though I'm in my body, I find I can, in my thoughts, in my mind, I'm sitting way above Earth, and I
Yeah.
can see everything. I can
Mm.
see how to me, I can see how science and spirituality sort of combine. I can see how we are connected to the animals, how we're like, and then of course all the movies that to me are like, can translate what it is that it is in my mind start coming up. Things like, well, of course, there's a lot of Disney movies, Frozen and Strange World and things like that, right? And then it started occurring to me, we learned about this. We learned all of this as children, but we forgot, right? As we grow and we live and we interact, we forget the simplicity of nature and how, how connected we really are, right? But it took me going back into isolation to reconnecting with my inner child. Not that she was ever lost to me, but like it was like when I was saying, like, even in therapy, putting my feelings outside and sort of, giving them a persona, whatever, to really understand myself better. Then I was like, okay, we're more than just the individual body. Like, I am every single person I have ever been from the start right up until now. Can you imagine how many different versions of that of me exist? They're still all within me. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so like the all of those, and I imagine all of these versions of me, and then thinking about all the trauma each version has gone through. That's a lot of crap.
Yeah,
right?
it's a lot.
To have to deal with. So then I started thinking, well, if that's just me, imagine what about all the other people that are walking around this planet, right? No wonder why the world is on fire. Because, right? And then after having to go through a pandemic and we were all isolated and disconnected from one another, it's that disconnection and that sort of armor that we put around our heart space. And this is why that movie, Strange World, I feel explains this to a T. And it's a recent movie. Like, it only came out maybe a couple years ago, I think. And if you haven't seen it, I encourage you to watch it. It's so good. But to me, it explains the whole idea of humanity, the vision of self, but the vision of Mother Earth and who, like, we are as a whole, all in this one film. Because it's the characters eventually come to the realization that they live within a living being. The living being planet Earth, right? Like, that's the translation. So and then the importance of the heart space. So and that's where I feel like that's what's lacking. It's that sense of, you have people who are trying to do the healing work, but they're only doing half of it. So they're still, and that half, it still keeps them disconnected to a certain degree. Where they're only connecting with part of the planet, which is what nature and whatever else. But one of the key important factors of this whole is the connection that we share as human beings. And when you can't see self in another person and respect that, then you're just reiterating the same karmic cycle again and again, like right? And nothing is really different. So and then what's going to repeat is probably going to either repeat in your lifetime or in the following generation. And then and then we continue with generational trauma and then just keep going. And it's like, when does it end? Until we're all wiped out, we're back into dinosaur times. Like,
it's true. And like, as you're saying all this, it makes me think a lot about the idea of like grace and because I feel like that's something that doesn't really get talked about often. I think especially as people are becoming more um and I know it's coming from a place of passion, a place of care, but people are becoming more and more divided because they're not seeing themselves in each other, they're becoming less and less forgiving. You know, like I, for example, if you hadn't realized, will definitely categorize myself as left. I'm a left-minded person. You know, I believe in diversity. I believe in equality. I believe in that side of things. But what I find a lot with people becoming more and more extreme left and more extreme right is there's less and less and less, and this is a two-way street, less and less grace between, where there's neither side is giving the other any breathing room or credit for growth or healing, or the fact that often when they say extreme things, it's coming from a place of hurt. And and I think we've also got into a place, and I think this is like dramatized by social media. We've also got to a place that if you do show grace towards the other side, you're seen as making excuses for them, or
You're a traitor, or
yeah, or not really sticking to what you believe in. And I don't think that's the case. You know, obviously you can't change everyone, and at the end of the day, it's the individual's responsibility to grow and learn, you know. But all we can do is do our side, which is to love, which is to have some grace, but also to stick by, you know, what we believe is going to unify us and is going to be healthy for us, and that's going to make the world a better place. And sometimes extreme action is taken, and sometimes you know, again, you'd find this in the tarot. Sometimes you need to have a gentle word, and sometimes you have to be forceful. You know, it's a tricky thing to navigate, but I feel like grace is a key theme that wherever you land, wherever your experience, wherever your situation is, wherever you lie politically or whatever, grace is a big thing that is missing because unity, this is something I've been thinking about for the last few years. This idea of unity, and actually the oracle deck that I'm creating is about unity. Is this idea that we have it wrong in our heads that unity is about being the same. When unity isn't about being the same, unity is about harmony between different things. And that's actually what makes unity and diversity beautiful. Like,
Mhm.
okay, if you take two clones off one person and they get along, so what? Where's the beauty in that? Where's the love in that? Whereas when you have different people, different ways of being, different ways of existing, living harmoniously, that is beautiful. That is unity. And as you said, this idea of the world being the being, and we're part of that. Again, to dip into Christian language, you know, Jesus just, was it Jesus or was it the Old Testament? I can't remember. I think it was Jesus who said we are part, you know, we're body parts, we're parts of the greater body. So you might be a foot and I might be a hand. The point is we often get distracted by trying to unify by being the same or being on the same page. Whereas actually we should be understanding and appreciating that we are all different and we are all going to be different, you know, and we're getting extreme people on either side. We get extreme people who hate diversity, hate difference, or they like difference within their comfort zone. Um, and it's like, no, we need it to be graceful. We need to understand that we're never all going to agree. We're never all going to be on the same page. We're never all going to be the same. And
We all have different journeys, right? We all have different purposes. Um,
Mhm.
and and the road that our DNA has traveled, if you will, is
Mhm.
never the same pathway. It,
Mm.
it's going to vary. Are we
Mm.
going to cross paths at some point? Sure, right? But it doesn't, but how we got to that point is going to be different. So, right? So
Yeah.
I want to, you know what, let's jump into your transient light deck and how this one came to be, because um the idea of the eye, and and of course, when we're thinking about the third eye and all of that, it just this deck to me was very and of course, so I got this deck from you, and the additional card that I got was the star,
Oh, lovely.
and I love that. But it's even the simplicity of your drawings, like it's all what looks to be like parchment paper, but it's not, but the color scheme, right? We have the fool, and I love this because first we have the eye, and in the middle it's similar, the you have a flower, right?
Mhm.
So it's the idea of blooming, right? And the vision of what is beautiful, where we come from, right? The stars, we have the key, and then there's the fool, like he's like, I'm I'm jumping into the world. Whee! And
Yeah.
I can relate to this because um of course the story of my origins is I was a breech baby, so I
Ah.
was coming out feet first, so I was like wee with my head the wrong direction as opposed to the way it was supposed to be, and
Mm.
then I was ripped out because I was coming out the wrong way, so they had to go in and get me. So I didn't come in by my own volition, technically. The world pulled me out. Okay. That's how, I'm
Oh,
being
wow, I love
dramatic, of course. But yeah, right. So, and then to me, what looks like between the sky and what looks like water here, because wave, I mean, the idea, well, we're what, 60% water,
that.
and if you are, you are living out your best life, as your inner child is living its best life, and you're into like like Frozen, Olaf, it was like, water has memory, right?
Mm.
And so I remember that, and if we're 60% water, then that's
Mm.
how we are too connected to the
Mm.
flow and the ebb and flow of life, right? So our bodies store information, right? And being able to attune to that, like that's to me the whole idea of spirituality, and why spirituality is still connected to science, because
Yeah,
right.
100%. Mm.
And so it's not either or, it's
Mm.
it's everything.
Mm.
um and so then when I got the deck and I started using it, and then I connected with it right away, and just the simplicity of the imagery, but to me it was speaking a language I understood, if that makes sense.
Mm.
um and then to know that because nowadays, of course, people love to have extra cards, and technically your extra cards create a panoramic,
Yes.
um and the panoramic is, even though it's the past, present, and future, when you connect the cards, you're seeing the flow of, to
Mm.
me, what looks like the process of DNA, the symbol of DNA, and the
Mhm.
colors that flow within it, because we're that diverse. Like, I mean, you
Mhm.
know, to me, this is like it couldn't be any clearer of what are of who we are and our origins. Like this in itself is a statement, you know.
Mm.
And so that was another thing that I really enjoyed. And not only at the end having these as like a reminder of the connectivity of self and everything, but you can also use them a bit like prompts, right? Like if you're doing a 3-card pull, you can use them as prompt cards, right?
Mm.
There's so much what's the word I'm looking for? Usability with the cards, right? So with these extra cards especially. So that was another really a really cool thing that I really loved about this deck that you did. And like I said, even especially like the imagery, even the magician card, like I like how you've got, so it necklaces, but they're different aspects of like what do you call it?
The four
Talisman,
elements.
right?
Yeah,
Like
the elements. Yeah.
talismans, right? And the representation. So we have crystals, right? We have the idea of death and rebirth and stuff. And you know, the significance of like the animal spirit with the feather. So I really and even the strings are all sort of different that they're
Yeah.
hanging on too.
They're,
So
they're
like,
based they're based on real necklaces. I've got the skull here.
oh, okay.
So they're all based on real necklaces, and they are necklaces that are used in my spiritual practice as representing the four elements, not just earth, air, water, and fire, but also of the self, the spirit, the
Yeah.
body, the mind, and the heart. And I also reflected them in the crown cards. So each crown or king card has one of those necklaces as well. So relating to the element. So there is so the idea is that like if the crowns are these four points of mastery in the four elements, they're all brought together
Yes.
with the magician.
Yeah,
Um,
I really like that too. You like, yeah, you did a really good job with this. And I even like the way the court cards. So the court cards are, you have the apprentice for the page. You
mhm.
have, don't worry, your hair is perfect. You have the apprentice for the page. You have the champion, and then for the knight, you have the queen is the keeper,
Mhm.
and the crown is the essentially the king, right? In this case. And I know some in some tarot decks the queen and king tend to be reversed sometimes. And I think that I I I'm not 100% certain if that is a thought, what the difference is between the RWS and the Thoth where that is concerned, because I know the difference when it comes to with the strength and the justice card being flipped. But in regards to the masculine and feminine being switched, I'm not entirely 100% versed on the
Mhm.
significance of that. But um yeah, so I really like how that presentation too, because it to me it gives a better understanding of the role, if you will, between like what the page and the knight and right and the king and the queen. So um that's another thing that I really like about this deck. Um and the names are too traditional. Um, they're not too far off, is what I mean. Because you still have wands, and then for instead of cups, you have vessels, which
Mhm.
essentially is still kind of the same
Yeah.
premise. And then we have then the swords, and then is it coins or pentacles? It's
Coin.
coins. Okay. But essentially the same premise as well. So yeah. And I really like that. And then you don't really have, so it's when it comes to the other thing about this deck, that the simplicity of it is that there's no sort of, well, not really. I wouldn't say that there, because the people, there's not much people, but and I think we only see parts of people. Like I don't remember there being a whole person shown. It's
No.
parts of the body
Yeah.
um that we
There's
see.
hands. Yeah, there's hands. I think the most of a person you see is the apprentice of vessels, where it's a potter at a wheel. But even then, there's no face. You kind of just see the arms and the torso. But yeah, used
The
to use of
apprentice there, yeah.
yeah, there you
So
go.
and the way that it's colored in, they're kind of, there's no really racial prediction. They're shades, if you will. They're not, there's no real, like, racial sort of I want to say profiling, if you will, but that's not really what I mean. But like, right? There's no depiction of actual race. It's shades, basically. So that's another thing too, to help keep it, universal, if you will. That I really like about that. And then so of course this was first indie, and then it came out mass market with Hay House.
Mhm.
And it's just these little touches that really tickle me, because like on the box here it says made with love. I'm all about love, right? So like, and again, this is the whole thing, right? It's you putting your heart and your soul into this, and that, and I feel it as I receive the deck and I use the deck. I feel that, and
Mhm.
I appreciate that. And I think that's where, for me, the connectivity to the decks and the creators and things like that really mean something to me. And why I love a good guidebook, because it's not just about the cards, it's how that creator envisioned it, how they see it, and getting to know what their perspective was in its creation, right? So
Mhm.
that I really, really enjoy because of that. Um, and then you did the Trinity Tarot, which now is also mass market, but surprise, surprise, it did not come out with Hay House. It's with US Games.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, and we were talking earlier about the whole premise with the US Games and me living in Canada and the accessibility and all that. So, and of course, the version that I have is the indie version, if you will.
Mhm.
Um, and it's different from the mass market. So I'll let you sort of talk about that, because I
Sure.
don't have yet the mass market version, but
Mhm.
mine comes in the tuck box, and it's a fold out um piece of paper with the meanings and the keywords and everything on it. And I assume
Mhm.
it's the same for the US Games
It's quite
version.
similar. Yeah, it's quite similar. So the Trinity Tower has gone for the most changes. Like the Transient Light, when that got taken over by Hay House, the changes were minimal. We changed the front cover of the deck, but pretty much everything. I added a little extra to the booklet. But apart from that, it's quite true to the original. Whereas the Trinity Tower has changed three times. So the first ever version, because the version that you've got is the indie version, but it's not the first edition. The first edition had a completely different box. Um, and
Oh,
also,
you have the first edition with you?
I do somewhere. I feel like I saw it very recently. Um, What I think it might be in here. Give me one moment. Going through all of my there we go. There we go. So this was actually the first version.
Oh, okay. I think I remember that now.
Mm.
I think I do
And
remember that.
yeah, and so this was the first version, and actually the artwork was different as well. So show you an example. So that was the first version, and then after this version, I re-artworked it and changed some of the names. So I changed the name of the court cards the same as the transient light. And then I also here's an example. The first ever edition. Can you see the lines? They were digitally made. So they
Okay,
are all
yeah.
even. They're all like even and straight and even.
Yes.
Whereas I re-artworked every card, so you've got this flowy effect. So it's very subtle, but it adds some movement, it adds some hu like humanity to the cards. Um
Yes.
so that was the first change. When it comes to the US games version, um the box you have is a type box like this, but the US games one is a two-part box, which also gave me the opportunity to add some extra bits. So I've got a like an intro letter, and I add a little butterfly in the center as well. And then the guidebook or the piece of paper, very, very similar. Again, I've added just a little extra to it. Um, uh, I've got a little about the creator section added, and I've also added like a spread, a tarot spread that I designed. So
Okay.
yeah, so there's a couple of little extras with this one. The cards themselves haven't changed from the version you have, the indie version that you have. Um, but yeah, it's been it's been interesting seeing it go mass market because like with Transient Light, I'd been self-publishing that for about a year before it went to mass market, or a year and a half. Whereas Trinity Tarot, I've been self-publishing for like 4 years. So for it to come out last week um is kind of bizarre because to me it's the first deck I made, and um it's been with me for 4 years. So it's been really interesting.
Oh,
And
wait, 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 wait. Okay, sorry. The Trinity Tarot is the first deck you created?
yeah,
I thought it was the Transient Light.
no, so this was made first, then I made the Transient Light, and then the Transient Light got published, and then this one got published. So so
Okay.
so it was actually the other way around because I made this one in 2020 and I made Transient Light in 2021. And then Transient Light got published in 2022 and Trinity Tower in 2024.
So
So it's a little bit backwards.
yeah. So, well, okay. Well, thank you for the clarification because I thought it was the other way around. And I just love this deck. Like it's very simplistic and it kind of reminds me a little bit of the Biddy Tarot. I don't know if the small one that comes in because it's very simplistic artwork.
Yeah.
Um,
It's like flat color style, isn't it? I think I might even have a copy somewhere, but yeah.
Yeah, and then they actually came out with a bigger version that's I forget or maybe that one's called the Biddy Tarot. I can't remember what the little one was called,
Mm.
but yeah, but it has that sort of same artwork like the right like very simplistic. Yours
Mhm.
sort of goes more into the symbolism here. I
Mhm.
don't think there's other than the Fool. I don't recall there being any people. No.
No, again, there's some hands. I
Well,
use
there's some
hands
hands, but yeah.
for the aces. I use hands for the aces, and there's a couple of other ones. I think there's some wands and swords being held by hands. But yeah, in general, apart from the fool and
And
eyes, of
even yeah, and even the name of the majors here. So we have the magician, but you have the revealer instead of the
Mhm,
high priestess. You
mhm,
have the nurturer instead of the empress.
mhm,
The defender instead of the emperor.
mhm,
Instead of the Hierophant, we have the proclaimer.
mhm.
There's still the Lovers, the Chariot, Strength, the Hermit, the Wheel of Fortune, and yeah, Justice. So, and instead of the Hangman, we have the Hanged One.
Hmm.
And I like that it's like a cross pendant, but it's upside down. So
Hmm.
it's to me that's the symbolism of turning Christianity on the traditional sense of Christianity on its head. Like it's not
Yeah.
what
Yeah,
we
I had
know
to be
it
very,
to be today.
yeah,
So
I had to be very sensitive with that card because I think actually in the very first version, um, I need to check now, but I think I didn't have it as a pendant. Oh no, I did. Or maybe there was a much older version then. But basically, I had to be careful because I didn't intend that card to be like a reversed crucifix in any kind of offensive way. Um, but I did want it to be that kind of reclaiming and also that kind of perspective thing. So that's why I made it a pendant rather than just a reversed cross. Because when I first was imagining it, it was a reversed cross. But by adding the string to the top of the cross, it's quite clearly, an upright cross that is being viewed upside down. So there's this kind of
yeah. And you know what?
it's
And
like
and
looking at
to
a
me, the
triangle.
simplicity of this, it holds a lot of power, especially for me being, raised Christian and first Catholicism and then the rest of my family are all different denominations of Christianity as well. So even that to me, it's like even even the idea of Christianity, nobody could agree even with that. So
Yeah.
like so everything trickled down from Catholicism now to what? To Pentecostal to
Mhm.
um Seventh-day Adventist. Oh God, like it just so many, right?
Mhm.
Presbyterian, all of those
Mhm.
different versions. And it's like, it's the same, right? Like I just like it's the same.
Mm.
And so yeah, so to me this holds a lot because I know I spent a lot of my upbringing questioning things and being confused because okay, well if God made the earth and then he made Adam and Eve, then how come how did we arrive from apes? Like right? Like what you learn in school. And that was so it took like I've never really adhered to the traditional sense of Christianity. I always questioned everything.
Mm.
And with sense, I guess purposefully, like because something in me knew that something just wasn't right,
Mm.
and I feel like, but it didn't. It took me becoming an adult to finally break through that sort of glass ceiling, if you will, right?
Mm.
And so that's why I really love the Hanged One and the symbolism behind it, because to me it's about revamping the idea of Christianity
Mm.
into include more than what we were taught. So
Mm.
yeah, so I really like that. Um, and then we have the Death card, and
Mhm.
then Temperance, and the the Devil. That's a
Mhm.
very interesting take on
Mhm.
the Devil card. To me it's like it's exactly that. You have the two hearts, right? The good inside of love, but then
Mhm.
the devil is the perspective.
Yeah.
It's our, how we perceive things to be versus how they actually are,
Yeah.
and so I really like that. You did like the art is very simplistic, but it's meaningful. And
Mhm.
so I really appreciate that. And like yeah, this is a very simplistic but very powerful deck
Mhm. Like,
in that regard. So
yeah, and there's kind of two reasons. Like, one was I had the intention of creating something that was minimalist because I wanted to like declutter it. Um, so I wanted it to be minimalist, but I didn't want it to not have the richness. Like, because I'd seen some minimalist decks which were like super minimal, like the devil was literally just a pair of horns, or like, you know what I mean? Like, and I was like, well, I want it to be minimalist, but I want it to be rich. So I really focused on the symbols. And another part of it was also working with the way I naturally create, which is quite speedy. Like when I'm working, when I'm channeling, when I'm in that flow state, it's speed. And I will most of the time go with my first impulse. So it was kind of really freeing for me as a creative to just say, this is the image I have for it, put it down, artwork it nicely. And how can I simplify this? How can I keep it rich? And it was interesting. I didn't realize at the time how well that was working for me until after I then made the Transient Light, and then I started working on this other Oracle deck that I haven't finished yet. And it started making me realize, oh, I miss working like I did with the Trinity Tarot, because I feel like that was the most um impulse, like like I don't know, kind of raw that I had worked. And I've decided in this fourth deck that I'm also creating, I'm returning to this style. Um, and it's probably going to be a square oracle. So I think it's kind of go hand in hand with the Trinity. Like a
I
Trinity.
can't wait for that because
Yeah.
that I very much like working like and so when I and also too when I really like an artist's work, it's like I want all of what they've created. Like I
I love
want it like
it.
everything, right? So like but actually here's something that I'm wondering with the Trinity Tarot, this version that I have,
Mhm.
um, is there did you include two fools?
No, unless when I sent you it, I sent like a bonus card.
Not that I recall.
Okay.
Um,
If you have
with
two
it.
fools, then I don't know, you're lucky.
But yeah,
There's
I apparently have two fools.
oh,
And
interesting.
so yeah, and then I noticed that there was a fool behind it.
Oh, a fault in
So
the system.
yeah,
Actually, to be fair, I do recall there was a couple of people who had fool cards missing. So I think it must have been an issue with the printers. I think maybe some people's full cards got put because I always have like spare decks. And so I was
yeah.
able to send them an extra full card. So maybe I think it must have been I think there must have been an issue with the printers. And
Okay, so
some
somehow I ended up with two fools. So I was like, is that how I was like I remember when I got that, I was like, was I supposed to have two fools? And then so I was like, okay, well, and then I thought, okay, well, because I know some creators they'll do two of a particular card. Um, and I think there are some decks that actually do have two fulls. I think what's her name? Chris Ann in her I forget that her latest deck, the one with the anamorphic animal deck. I think the two fools. There's the dog, and then there's
ah,
the human with the dog at the end. I can't remember. But anyways, if I find it, I'll put it up to to show in editing. But so I was thinking initially that okay, well maybe there was a difference between the two fools, but then
mm,
as I started I was comparing them, like no, it's the exact same fool. I was
mm.
like, there's nothing. I was like, okay, so I have two fools then. Okay. And then I was
Gotta
like,
start.
Well, then there you go. So yeah, so this deck is also is really special. I guess too with that regard, having the two fools included in the deck, which was not expected. And yeah, so you did such an amazing job. I I really I really am very impressed with your work and just everything that you created, and I can't wait to. So actually, another thing to mention about the transient light, there's
Mhm.
poetry in the guidebook,
Mhm.
and the poetry is written by Basta Jolie,
How's the Tony? Yeah.
and that is also really cool too. Um,
Yeah, it was really a really wonderful thing to be able to work with Fausta on this. So Fausta is my best friend and she is a poet and she's also a tarot reader and she has been doing tarot since she was a teenager. So she has more years of tarot under her belt than me. And we'll often like read for each other. And um what's so nice, and what's so nice about tarot reading is that everyone has their own way of reading. And
yeah,
I always love like getting the cards out with her and I'll read it this way, but she'll read it that way. And so when I was creating the transient light, I kind of had in the back of my mind, it would be so wonderful to have her input. I mean, already she had her input to a certain level, like she kind of consulted throughout the process. Like I shared the whole journey with her, and sometimes she would bring ideas in and help me kind of put into words, what I was visualizing. I think if you find the chariot card, that one was very inspired by her. Well, visually was inspired by her. Um, uh, or I was inspired by her in that card. But so what happened was I was still creating the deck when I was doing the Kickstarter for it. And I was fortunate enough that it funded in the first 24 hours or 48 hours. And as a result, it overfunded. And the overfunding allowed me to expand it because it was going to be in a simple box. It wasn't going to have a guidebook, but the overfunding allowed me to upgrade the box and make a guidebook. Um, and as soon as I knew that that was happening, I was like, Alistair, you need to have your poetry in here. You need to write the poetry. Um, so it was so lovely to collaborate in that way. I'd make these because she does a poem for each of the major arcana. And she also does an intro poem for each uh house or
each
court card,
suit. Yeah,
Yeah, that's the word. I was like, oh, suit. And it was so lovely to be able to hand her over the artwork and for her to put her spin on it. She often has uh, a more fiery uh, and sometimes more practical. Like my voice in the guidebook, my voice is quite gentle, and I'm not hugely challenging. I like to be quite soft with my voice, whereas Faust in her poetry brought this kind of energy and this like movement and this poetic side to these cards, which I was so thankful and like just blessed for her to like do that for me. And then at the very end, when we were putting it together, we then worked together to make a single poem in three parts that we distributed amongst the guidebook. So remind myself. So like the first part of the poem is like in the introduction. Yeah, it's in the introduction page. And then the second part of the poem, I think begins the minor arcana. It's been so
Um,
long ago. And the final part of the poem is near the end.
yeah,
I think it
that one
changed.
I forgot about that because it's been a while since I've actually used this deck.
Yeah.
I use like hardcore because I like to spend like a month with my decks
Mm,
sometimes, and then and multiple decks, and then I put them back until the next time. And that was, I forgot, that was one of the things that I think why I was so attached to this deck again was because of the poetry. So I have a
Mm.
love for, and again, being, discovering myself and, being a bibliomancer, as something that, I feel I connect with. That's one of the things too that really added for me.
Mhm.
Um, with this deck is the poetry associated with the cards, and wasn't just about the meanings, but it heightened the meanings, if you will. So that was another thing that I really like. And there's a few decks that do that have poetry associated with it. Actually, I think Chris Ann's The Muse Tarot, there's poetry in that too. So
Mm.
yeah, so
Yeah.
that's
It
just an
felt
extra little oomph to the.
yeah. It felt very natural, especially because like I write when I'm making visuals, it almost always comes with words. It's just usually it's the visuals that I show to people. But like every painting I do usually has some kind of poem that I've written alongside it. And in my sketchbooks and stuff, words have always been a really important part of it. So poetry and writing is like part of the process of creation. So it just felt so natural to have poetry even in it, even though it wasn't my poetry in the end that was in there. Um, but I got to be poetic in how I wrote my descriptions, even though they weren't poems. And I did get to do like a longer introduction poem at the beginning of the booklet. Um, yeah, I think it just fits perfectly with my process and it adds that extra level for people to be able to connect and taking the card meanings in a different way.
I really like that. So I know you said that you um you do have a couple other projects on the go, one that you're working with, one that you are keeping to yourself for now. But like, and so we know about that technically the one that I think, is it the one that you're currently working on right now that's going to be the square and is going to sort of maybe be the adjacent to this Trinity
Mhm.
Tarot, if you will.
So I'm working on I'm working on two Oracle decks at the same time.
Okay.
The first one I started like 2 years ago. It's taken me longer than any of the tarot decks. Um, so that one is in the process, and that one will be out next year, all being well. Um, so that one is going to be it's kind of like the third part of the main deck. So there's like the Trinity, the Transient, and then the third part is this Oracle deck. And that
Okay.
is going to be quite different in terms of it's going to be full color. Like both of these decks were quite limited palettes, whereas
Yeah.
this one is going to be full color. There's going to be hand lettering. Um, it's going to be a mixture of affirmations and empowerments and meditations. So I'm kind of going wild with that one.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I can feel the energy in me just like, wait, we can't wait. Like we're just like, this
yeah,
sounds really exciting. So
exactly. And
um
yeah, I can't share much about it. Like I won't talk about the publisher yet, and I won't talk about the name of it, but I am sharing on my Instagram some of the images that I'm making for it. So you can kind of get a flavor of what's coming. And then alongside that, I'm creating the one that's adjacent to Trinity Tarot. And that one I am doing at my own speed, with no editor, no publisher, and I'm doing it. I'm returning to the practice that I did when I made my first ever tarot deck. Um, and it's interesting because it is focused around unity because the Trinity Tarot is kind of all about recognizing the divinity within the self and within yourself.
mhm.
Whereas this unity deck is going to be all about, okay, well, if we're all parts of the divine, how do we unify? So it's kind of like it is kind of a sister deck to this. Like, how do
I,
we do
I
that?
really love that. That sounds amazing, and I I'm really looking forward to that because like I said, that's all what I'm about, right? Like, and the idea that there's levels to the idea of love, right? We love
Mm.
self, we love, our
Mm.
family, our partners,
Mm.
if we are with a partner, and then and then of course the idea, the connectivity to the whole, right? So, the universal aspect of love.
Yeah, and it's just that, like in this Oracle deck that I'm creating, I have 9 love cards. So there's different sections, but there's 9 love cards. So I have love for self, love for nature, love for family, love for partners, love for friends. But I also have love for strangers, love for enemies. So there's 9 loves that I'm working with. Um, so there's going to be lots of groups of 9. There's a little bit of reclaiming of gifts and the 9 gifts of the spirit and the 9 fruits of the spirit. But there's also going to be some references to the transient light. There's going to be more biblical references, but there's going to be a lot of 9s and a lot of unity, a lot of love, and a lot of how do we collide? How do we do this? Um, so I'm very but I literally had the idea maybe a month ago, and I've already made maybe 15 of the cards. Like it's happening very quick and it's flowing, and
Wow.
I'm really excited about it. Um, so yeah, I don't know at what point I should share some of it, but I'm itching to share some of it. For sure, for sure. Maybe on Instagram.
I'm really excited. Like I said, like what you've come out with is amazing, and I can't wait to get my hands on. I initially was even thinking about it. I'm like, do I really need the mass market version? And I'm like, but the box is cute. The box is cute. Yeah, I do. And that's all. I was like, then I said the box is cute, and the box has like, especially the inside of the box, which isn't, on this. So I was like, yeah, I do need it. Like, that was my justification. I do need it. Um, and and who doesn't want a double copy of, like, an amazing deck? So, like, yeah. So, this was amazing. Talking to you. Um, about your work. Well, this was such an enjoyment you know, to be able to experience. And I want to thank you very, very much for taking the time to actually to chat with me and getting to meet you. Um, like I said, it's all about, the human aspect, and these are tools that that people create, and but they're people behind it, and so honoring the people behind it is what I really enjoy doing. And just getting to to chat and share the love, like, so this, it truly was a blessing for me. And even just to talk about your work and to know more about you know what we can expect coming from you. And what other love you have to offer the rest of us, to aid in the healing and the introspection and all of that. So, of course, everything will be linked down in the description box. And um I encourage all to like, share, and subscribe, not just because I'm talking with Ari today, but because of the fact that, I like to discuss things with many different people and many different creators, and the opportunity to share in this joy with another is amazing. So, and I hope that other people will enjoy that too. And so now you have both decks that are mass market and are going to be, you know, fully accessible, to the masses, except for the fact that US Games is not shipped to Canada, so I have to go through a distributor. I got I get jealous of people who live in the States and they're like, oh, US Games just sent me a couple decks for a review, blah, blah, blah. I was like, wow, gee, I wish they would send it to Canada. Like, I mean, so much easier.
Crazy, yeah. Oh.
But I mean, they have obviously they have their reasons, and it's not always, the exchange is not always the easiest thing either, right? So and so you do what you got to do. But yeah, like I'm excited for what more you have coming, and just to learn more about you, and of course, I'll have your links to like Instagram and everything down below, and I hope that you will come back and join me when your other decks have come out, and we can talk all about them and gush about them, and just chat about life, because you're an amazing person to talk to, and I am absolutely in the pleasure of my life with this. So yeah, so I want to thank you and everyone for joining us today, and as I always love to say, I am love and so are you. So as you take care of yourself, I take care of myself, and we take care of each other, and and I hope that everyone will adhere to the same, as well, and because we are all human, and and we're the guardians of this planet, right? So as I like to say, and until next time, please always live, listen, and learn. Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much.
No matter what people